The keys to this cart. I need to get back to the pit lane. What a moment, what a way to start this European Grand Prix, Sam.
Just moments ago, Bob, he was standing, here he goes off on a motor scooter. Just moments ago, he was getting into that car, so Schumacher, Michael, who starts from the pole, is having a very agitated moment, obviously giving directions there. Now, let's go to Peter Windsor for a moment with the latest news since the Canadian Grand Prix. Peter?
Thanks, Sam. Well, 2 weeks on, of course, it's politically correct for Juan Pablo Montoya and Jacques Villeneuve to say that all is forgotten, nothing really happened in Canada. We remember, however, that brake testing incident, and pushed hard enough, Juan Pablo does too.
You know, everybody has its point of view. And I think, you know, I think my character is pretty strong, and I think his is very strong as well. And Adam, you know, if they come to you and talk in a nice way, you talk to them. But if they don't, then you don't.
And for the two Schumacher brothers, of course, there was a celebration with a difference.
We always have little parties after we've had a good weekend, and that was pretty similar. I mean, we had 1 or 2 beers, and then we had to go to the helicopter anyway, so there was not a lot of time, but the atmosphere has been as always.
We didn't kiss each other, but no, we certainly enjoyed during a nice cigar and a beer the event.
David Coulthard in Canada, well, a front rocker bolt fell into his legs on the formation lap, would you believe? And that, of course, did nothing for his confidence or for the performance of his McLaren Mercedes. But what happened to the errant part?
When I came round to the grid, I tried to throw it over the pit wall so the team could get a look at it, but unfortunately my grid position was in between McLaren and Ferrari, and of course they're not on the pit wall at that moment, so it whizzed over the head of a track marshal who kind of did one of those and disappeared into the system.
Adrian Newey and Jaguar have settled. Adrian here this weekend at the Nürburgring with his wife Marigold, working again for McLaren. The settlement figure rumoured to be about $2 to $3 million. Not a fortune in the overall context of things, and one presumes that is because the document that Adrian signed was indeed a letter of intent rather than a fully blown contract. Some argument about that, but now we really seem to know the truth, I suspect. Beyond that, Stephen Taylor, the McLaren engineer who went to Sauber as chief designer, after 2 months has resigned and has gone back to McLaren. Finally, the teams are testing with rear brake lights now, following a couple of incidents earlier this year where cars ran into the back of others. Most drivers giving that test thumbs up at Silverstone. Personally, I question it. What happens, for example, if a driver doesn't touch the brake pedal but the red light comes on? Heaven forbid. And secondly, drivers like the Schumachers, for example, good example of left foot breakers, are they really going to want all their secrets on parade to the public, those red lights coming on whenever they touch the brakes with the left foot? Michael says this isn't a problem, although privately he did tell me that for sure Ferrari would come up with a system that would prevent everyone knowing all of their secrets.
All right, thank you, Peter. And Sam, as Peter pointed out, the silly season is well underway here at the halfway point of the season. Now, there's been no change. Michael Schumacher is still on his way back to the pits. There he is in the Ferrari garage getting into the backup car. His car stalled about as far away from the pits here at the new Nürburgring as you can get, down in the Dunlop corner. And that Ferrari has been parked, so Michael is down to 1 car.
Well, Bob, coming up next, we will be hearing from the man with the most passes for position in Formula One this year. But now it's time for the Foster's Trivia question. Since it was first held in 1983, 3 drivers have won their first Formula One race in the European Grand Prix. Can you name all 3? Here's a clue. 2 of the 3 are in today's race. We'll be back with the answer in just a moment. One race in the European Grand Prix are Nigel Mansell in 1985 at Brands Hatch, Jacques Villeneuve in 1996 here at the Nürburgring, and Mika Hakkinen the next year in Jerez. Now, Michael has been on the track in his spare car. He's back in the pits now. He's out there again. He made a lap, came back to the pits, and has now gone back out. The spare car, fortunately, set up for him, so it took no time whatsoever to get him into it. Now, on Saturday morning, the Arrows team announced that Jos Verstappen has been re-signed for the 2002 season. Verstappen has been terrific this year. With a smaller than average fuel tank, he has time and time again made up places on the track. Here's Peter Windsor.
Thanks, Sam. Well, they say there isn't much overtaking in Formula One, but one man is living proof to the contrary. That man is Jos Verstappen, and this year he's overtaken no fewer than, well, let's hear it from Jos himself.
I mean, just a few journalists 5 minutes ago, they had how many cars I overtook already, without cars stopping on the track and in the pit stop. I overtook 59 cars in 8 races, or 8 races. So that's a good average, but it's possible to overtake, especially when you have a lighter fuel load. But what I don't understand is we come out in a 2-stop because of tire wear, brake wear, and fuel effect, and all the others they don't. And we have shown in let's say like Austria, we can, it will give us some advantage, and as well in Canada. But I don't know, maybe we do something wrong or they do something wrong.
But how do you like driving these cars with launch strategy, traction control, automatic gear shift?
No, I don't use the automatic upshift or downshift. I use traction control and launch control, obviously. Launch control is very consistently good. I mean, it's quicker than I can do a start. And traction control will save your rear tire. So at the end of the day, it will give you a quicker lap time in a race.
But why don't you use the automatic shift?
I don't like it. I try, I want to concentrate on the gear, on the lights who comes on when you have to shift, and especially on the down change. I mean, when you brake really late, I think you have a better feeling. I think it's just a better handling of the car. The upshift, maybe it doesn't make that much difference, but I like the idea to shift up myself, and I must say I'm very consistent with that as well, so it won't make any difference on lap time.
Bob Varsha, Michael Schumacher has made it around to the grid, so that appears to have been a blip on the screen. Everything seems to be okay, but he is going to have to start, we assume, in his backup car.
Well, it's hard to say, Sam, whether it was the spare or the race car that he took out for his opening reconnaissance laps. As I mentioned earlier, we do know that he likes to use both at this point in the race.
Now, before we go to break, if you are a video game junkie like David Hobbs, you got to check this out. It's Jenson Button playing the new Formula One 2001 game for the PlayStation 2 this weekend. The game is only available in Europe, not yet in the US. It's scheduled to be released sometime in the 3rd quarter, maybe in September. Formula One 2001 has all the drivers, teams, and tracks from this season, and therefore, Jenson Button probably qualified 20th and is struggling to hold off the minorities. We'll be right back. Perhaps because of a flaw in the design of the rival Ferrari. Peter Windsor asks a very important question about Michael Schumacher's car.
By how much did Michael Schumacher lose the Canadian Grand Prix? By several seconds, perhaps? Or maybe it was 5 laps, because that is the distance extra that Ralf Schumacher was able to cover in his Williams BMW on that first full load of fuel. Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, therefore, has a smaller fuel tank, given the fact that both engines probably have comparable fuel consumption. So is Michael worried about this?
We'll find out. I mean, certainly we know, and we will work on improvements.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? Tim Holloway, Jordan's chief engineer, pioneered the use of very, very large fuel tanks in Formula One, and he paints a somewhat different picture. Do you think Formula One could ever get to the point where you have a smaller tank car and a larger tank car?
I think so, yes. I know 1 or 2 people are looking at that as we speak. It's just logistics of trying to have the 2 cars. It's very difficult in this business anyway, just to get 1 car turned up for each race, but certainly from performance point of view, it would be an advantage.
In reality, then, it's only on the one-stop circuits that larger fuel tank cars really have an advantage. About 50%, however, fall into that category. But ahead of us right now, the next circuit is probably going to be Monza. In the meantime, expect many of the top teams to be looking for large and small fuel tank cars for the 2002 season.
We'll be back in just a moment with an onboard lap you will not want to miss. But first, another memory of the Nürburgring. For the diagram, notice that of the 13 turns, 10 of them are arranged in pairs, strikingly like Montreal, except here there's no big, long straightaway. Now at this point, David Hobbs usually narrates a lap of the track, and in his absence, we were forced to scrounge around for a substitute, and I'm afraid the best we could do was Juan Pablo Montoya. Live coverage of the European Grand Prix.
Canada, Michael won the race to the first corner. Ralph won the race. We'll see what happens this week.
Who blinks first? Who can go the furthest into the race before they have to make a pit stop? In Montreal 2 weeks ago, it was Ralf Schumacher, and he gained tremendously from that.
After Canada, Ralph said, well, the Williams team will show up every now and then. In the finishes they've had this year, there haven't been many, but they've been averaging 6 championship points per finish. See what happens today.
Watch the boss, Jos the boss, Verstappen, who's been passing cars right and left, and today starts from 19th. He's got his work cut out for him.
Now let's go back to turn 1 in a Formula 1 Grand Prix. 2 weeks ago in Canada, Michael had pole. Ralph started alongside. And the mad dash down to turn 1. A shorter run to turn 1 than we'll see today at the Nürburgring. Michael took the lead, but Ralph stayed comfortably with him. Meanwhile, on lap 21, Juan Montoya bounced off a curb, hit the fence, running 10th. Just behind him, Rubens Barrichello, who had spun himself back, also found himself out of the race. Now, as I mentioned, Michael led Ralph, who took a look inside his older brother on a couple of occasions, but he was firmly in control of the race because when Michael Schumacher pitted the Ferrari, brother Ralph stayed out in his BMW Williams and cut fast lap after fast lap, opened more than the time gap he needed, so that when it was his turn to make a pit stop, the team got him out before the clock struck 9 seconds. And as Michael hove into view at the back of the picture, all he could say was, bye-bye, brother. Ralf Schumacher went on to his 2nd victory of the year. He is 4th in the championship, but he could well become a spoiler. We'll be back. McLaren, so all may not be right in Mikaland. Cars about to roll off for their 1 lap before they come to the set position. We will be underway. Round 9 of the Formula 1 World Championship for 2001. And as the cars roll off, we turn to our Lexus starting lineup. Michael Schumacher, after that bit of drama, his 7th pole of the season, the 3rd time he and his brother Ralph have started together on the front row. Michael's Bridgestone tires blistered in Canada. He says that will not happen here. Ralph, of course, is on Michelin's.
The second row is comprised of the teammates of the men in the first row. Montoya just 0.3 of a second slower than his Williams teammate Ralf Schumacher, while Barrichello is 0.7 slower than Michael Schumacher.
On to row 3, where the McLarens reside. David Coulthard, last year's pole sitter, desperately needing to finish ahead of Michael for points in the World Championship. Last year's runner-up in this race, Mika Hakkinen, is there as well in the spare.
Row 4 is all Jordan, with Jarno Trulli out-qualifying Heinz-Harald Frentzen once again.
Back to row 5, Kimi Räikkönen and teammate Nick Heidfeld using a new specification of Ferrari engines badged as Petronas.
In row 6, we have Jacques Villeneuve, who recently opened a nightclub in Montreal. Alongside Jacques is the only man on the grid who can arrange a date faster than he can drive, Jaguar's Eddie Irvine.
Back on row 7, Olivier Panis is 6th in Canada. He starts 7 places further back here, alongside Jean Alesi in the Prost.
Row 8, Benetton's Fisichella, 1 race away from having the new engine he hopes will move him up the grid, and Jaguar's number 2 man, the 30-year-old Spaniard, Pedro de la Rosa.
Back on row 9 will be Luciano Berti, his first ever start at the Nürburgring. He'll be alongside Brazilian Enrique Bernoldi.
Bob, we've got to watch row 10 because Verstappen in the Arrows is very fast off the line, and as for Button, wait till he gets a better car.
Then back on row 11. In 18 starts this year, only 7 times have either Fernando Alonso or Tarso Marquez in the Minardi's started anywhere but the tail end. And now the field comes set. That camera shot is in the Coca-Cola curve, the final curve. A little bit of relief on the faces of the Ferrari crew. You can only wonder what's going through the mind of pole sitter Michael Schumacher, who blistered this track nearly 3 seconds quicker than last year's pole time.
Very dramatic situation with the first turn further away than it was in Montreal. A real chance for Ralf, starting a car length back of his brother, but he may outpower him down to turn 1. Very big deal.
Here come the lights. Turn up the volume as 22 cars rev to 18,000 RPM or more. We are ready for the start. Good getaway for the front row and for the row behind. Barrichello slightly slow. David Coulthard taking the bench. Look at Michael push his brother across to the pit exit. Ferrari of Schumacher, followed by the 2 Williams. I believe David Coulthard of the McLaren snagged 4th. Jarno Trulli in the yellow Jordan right there as well. That is David Coulthard just behind Montoya, then Hackett and Trulli. Everyone through turn 1, which is difficult here at the Nürburgring. And look at this crowd, more than 150,000 strong. We're used to weather being a problem here, but not today. That is the Dunlop corner, very slow, but also banked, so you can hold speed. And here is what Juan Pablo Montoya calls the hairy section.
We now have the identical scenario to Montreal 2 weeks ago, which is the brother Schumacher out front with Michael leading Ralph, who we ride with.
Through the Vidal chicane for the first time. Look for Rubens Barrichello. There he is. He has dropped back behind Trulli in the Jordan. The cars look so ungainly, bounding off those curves. But that's the way you have to drive the Nürburgring. A 1.4-second gap for Michael Schumacher this time by. But recall again, Canada 2 weeks ago, Ralph was firmly in command of the race.
Verstappen on the move. Up to 14th from 19th. He's picked off 5 spots.
This is steeply downhill. With the Dunlop curve again. Long right-hander. Looked like Montoya went a bit wide there. You're on Montoya's Williams. Just briefly.
Just as we were in our on-track lap, Montoya now doing it for real. He needs a result. Only 1 finish so far this year, albeit a second.
In a wonderful qualifying session, the Williams teammates almost took the front row. That hasn't happened since the British Grand Prix in 1997. Only Michael Schumacher stood between the Williams teammates and that front row. Having said that, Schumacher's lap was absolutely amazing.
One of the best laps I think we've ever seen him do. It was in the mold of Ayrton Senna. The lap lead has gone up slightly on lap 2.
And Heidfeld, his first Formula One Grand Prix in front of his home countrymen. Another look at the start from behind.
Watch Coulthard.
Slow getaway for Barrichello. Yes, Verstappen got a great start. Again, the Arrows has a very small fuel tank, deliberately so, because in this era of a tire war, the team suspected that they would be stopping a lot, and someone straight on at the Castrol S's the first time around. I believe it was one of the Minardis. Beginning to string out slightly. A very warm day at the Nürburgring in the Eifel Mountains, about 55 miles southwest of Cologne. And of course, warm temperatures have played into the hands of the Michelin runners earlier this year. Montoya, Coulthard, Hakkinen, Trulli, Barrichello, and the 2 Sauber teammates.
Verstappen still 14th, hung up now behind Fisichella, who finished very well here last year and is something of a master at this track. It's not going to be easy to get by. Wow,
Coulthard.
DC on the move.
The suspicion is the McLarens are underpowered around this racetrack. It's a medium-speed circuit, high downforce in the current aerodynamic configuration of Grand Prix machines.
Well, of course, there's been the bar has been put up a little bit higher by BMW, and whereas before McLaren had to deal only with Ferrari, they now have been embarrassed, literally, by their fellow automaker in Germany.
Look at the start from on board Juan Pablo Montoya's car. Now watch Michael push his brother right over to the wall. Thanks, bro.
Well, it's an affectionate gesture. He wants to be close to his brother as they enter the first turn.
From above, I don't know how we avoided contact. Watch to see who goes straight on.
Boy, Barrichello got killed there. It was terrible.
That's where truly got Barrichello. And they're working on the nose of a Ferrari as Michael continues to draw away. He must know this is what he has to do. His brother probably has an engine advantage on him and may have a fuel mileage advantage. So Michael is probably on a two-stop strategy, and he knows he has to draw away from his brother.
In practice and qualifying, the BMW engined Williams cars were faster than the Ferrari in the straight line by about 3 miles an hour.
So look at the Jordan. Heinz-Harald Frentzen is due to decide whether or not he wants to stay with the Jordan team. We understand it's his option, but he is expected to stay at Jordan.
He's had some problems lately with concussions, with terrible headaches and so forth. We're pleased to hear that as of today, apparently that's all behind him. He's in good shape and feeling good, running 10th, as you can see here. He needs a strong finish, though. His season has not unfolded well.
He cannot be feeling good about the way the season has gone for him. As we mentioned, both in our practice show and our qualifying broadcast, Honda confirmed this weekend that they will supply both the Jordan and BAR teams with engines next year. It was thought that they would drop one of those two teams. This is a long run down what is essentially a back straightaway into the Vidal S's. This is the key passing point on the racetrack. Checking the gap. Michael continues to draw away from Ralph, but you get the sense after the Canadian race 2 weeks ago that his brother is not easily shaken, and that he has a plan. Take a quick break and return live to the Nürburgring. Stay with us. The McLaren team looking on. Their men, David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen, running 4th and 5th behind Michael Schumacher, Ralf Schumacher, and Juan Montoya, with 7 laps now complete of 67 scheduled at the European Grand Prix. Bob Varsha, Sam Posey with you. Coming up Monday here on Speed Vision, a show that will reunite our Inside Winston Cup team of Ken Schrader, Johnny Benson, and Michael Waltrip. We're calling it One More Time. The program will also feature Kenny Wallace. It'll air Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. One More Time, Monday night, here on Speed Vision.
Michael Schumacher driving very conservatively compared to his qualifying. He's not going over the curbs. He seems smooth in every respect. He's not attacking the turns by flicking the car into them. He's just gliding into them. Look at that slow motion on the steering wheel. He seems to be in complete control at this point, and he's pulling away. As you can see, he's almost up to 3 seconds now.
Reinforcing the bulletproof reputation when it comes to his level-headedness that Michael Schumacher has. His spare car, we believe it to be the... Oh, there goes one of the Minardi's out of the race. That's Tarso Marquez.
Notice how stable the lap times are for Schumacher.
Michael's car stopped on his reconnaissance laps at the farthest point of the track in the Dunlop curve. He had to hijack a scooter, make his way back to the pits, and hop into what we think was his primary race car. And here he is, leading imperiously once again. He is the defending champion here at the Nürburgring. And right now, he runs a consistent 3 seconds ahead of his brother Ralph, right there in the Williams BMW. Then Juan Pablo Montoya. And I'm guessing from the way these opening laps are unfolding that the Williams cars are pretty heavy with fuel, as may be the McLarens. There's David Coulthard, who trails Michael Schumacher by 18 points for the World Championship.
It's interesting to see Montoya racing with Coulthard. Montoya has finished only 1 race this year, and Coulthard has failed to finish only 1 race. Quite a juxtaposition there of records.
It's Mika Hakkinen in 5th. There's his wife, Erja. Hakkinen very much off the boil this weekend, although he has said he is not yet willing to give up his ghost of a chance at the World Championship. He's going to continue to race flat out, even if that means not supporting his teammates' bid. There's Norbert Haug, Mercedes Motorsports Programs.
But the Mercedes engine has not been the strength that it once was this weekend. They just seem to be off in straightaway speed and off in punch off the turns. The handling of the car seems to be good, but for once Mercedes is not coming up with the goods, and they have a little bit of a cloud ahead for them with the death of Paul Morgan, a great organizer of the Ilmor company that supplies their engines. That tragic airplane crash where his plane just turned over.
Watching Heinz-Harald Frentzen trying to hold off Eddie Irvine. Irvine was 4th quickest in the morning warm-up. Approaching the Castrol S. No. German television switches away to the Dunlop corner to pick up the race leader, Michael Schumacher, in the Ferrari.
I'd like to say hello and good morning to everyone in the Cafe Paradiso in Boston. I know there are a lot of Ferrari fans up there, and they must be delighted to see a Ferrari so solidly out front.
Imagine there are groups of Ferrari fans all over the country happy to see the Ferrari out front. Not surprised. Especially you folks on the West Coast. We ask an awful lot of you getting up so early in the morning to watch Formula One racing live here on Speed Vision. There's Juan Pablo. This massive crowd, all the more surprising because this racetrack is a long way from anywhere. There are no major highways. There is one what the British would call dual carriageway outside the front gates. But it is an investment in time to come to the Nürburgring.
Interesting the way the race has strung out so very quickly with few battles anywhere in it right now. This obviously will change as the pit stops approach, but right now it's a parade.
Jürgen Hubbard from Mercedes looking on. I think it's interesting to note not a single driver has scored in every race this year, despite Michael Schumacher's dominant lead in the World Championship. He and David Coulthard have each missed one opportunity to score points. Among the teams, only Ferrari and McLaren have scored in every race.
Michael Schumacher is not using but about 7/10 of the road that he used in that qualifying lap yesterday.
Which would suggest that the car may be heavy with fuel. Normally this is a two-stop race. I imagine tire wear is going to determine whether these teams make it one or two, but the way the Williams cars are running, considering they are often the fastest cars in a straight line, I'm guessing that they might be one stop in this race.
This race started out very much the way Montreal did, with Michael just able to hold off Ralph, but it is developing along different lines because he is able to pull away easily.
You see right there, Ralf Schumacher took 1/10 of a second off his brother that lap.
We might be seeing the beginning of the reversal of that. In Austria, we saw the Michelin tires run through a slump at about this point. That obviously has been eliminated. They've worked that problem out. And now we are seeing Ralph begin to close the gap ever so slightly.
Ralph started on very scrubbed tires on the Michelins. He'd already put them through a heat cycle, trying to find that consistency. Michael Schumacher started on sticker Bridgestones. You look at David Coulthard, the flag of Scotland on his helmet. Speaking of Scotland, congratulations to three-time Formula One champion Jackie Stewart, who will be honored on the Queen's list and become Sir Jackie Stewart.
Well overdue in my view, a great contributor to the idea that racing could and should be safer. He raced in an era where it was diabolically dangerous, wouldn't accept that, although he himself took chances that few of his cohorts ever did. He was as brave as Dick Tracy, but he just felt that it shouldn't be that dangerous, got guardrails instituted. In fact, it was probably because of Jackie Stewart that we have this safe track here instead of the dangerous old Nürburgring, which of course is a mixed bit of emotion because it was a great track.
The first two cars are across the line, and again Ralf Schumacher has taken a few tenths off of his brother's lead. Continuing your point, Sam, Alan Henry pointed out on speedvision.com last week that Jackie's knighthood is particularly earned because he became a safety advocate when that was considered a blow against your manhood. Looking at Rubens Barrichello. He fell back in the early going. He too may be heavy with fuel. He runs back in 7th place.
Ralf Schumacher has just done a deal, or 2-year deal, to continue with Williams. And, you know, as you look at the top runners in this race, Bob, you realize how consistency and the sticking together as a team pays dividends.
Luciano Berti brings the Prost Acer into the pits. He's been off and on the track already once. And you can see him cleaning out the radiator inlets.
Which bespeaks of having been off into one of the gravel traps, which are so numerous around here.
Fuel in, no tire change.
Now that gap seems to be getting smaller as I just look at it.
Oh, last thing Ralph wanted was to get stuck behind Bertie. And the gap comes down by a few more precious tenths. Is Ralf Schumacher controlling this race from second place? What does he have in store for his big brother? We'll find out soon. Stay with us. We'll be back live.
1.7 seconds, Bob.
No change in the top 10. Michael, Ralph, then Juan Montoya, David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Jarno Trulli, Rubens Barrichello, Nick Heidfeld, Kimi Räikkönen, Heinz Harald Frentzen with Eddie Irvine all over the back of him. We'll take another quick break and be right back.
Welcome back. The gap from the lead Schumacher to the second place Schumacher is just 0.8 of a second now. Ralph has taken half a second off Michael in each of the last 2 laps. Another fast lap just cranked off. Ralf Schumacher on the move. But Montoya, back in third, has just set the fastest lap of all in the race. We hear also that Mika Hakkinen straight-lined the chicane at Vidal, but is back on the road. So there is Montoya with his fastest lap of 18.7. Now, don't forget, there is only 1 week until our next Grand Prix, which will come to you from Magny-Cours in France. We'll have Friday practice on June 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern and 9 Pacific, followed by live coverage of qualifying on Saturday, June 30th at 7 a.m. Eastern, and then the French Grand Prix itself at 7:30 a.m. Eastern on July the 1st. That's next week on Speed Vision. Bob?
Sam, I think Michael Schumacher may be cracking. He just made a mistake at the downhill portion to the Dunlop, managed to stay in front of his brother, but only by slamming the door in the rudest possible way. So, first he ran his brother over to the pit wall at the start of the race, and now he has practically taken the nose off his car on the track. Now the gap is down to 0.264, and there's Ralph looking down the inside.
At Montreal, Ralph looked and looked and looked, but knew that he could make the pass in the pit stops. I don't think he's going to be as patient today. He's closed in at such a decisive rate that it means he's got superiority basically all around the track. And there are a couple of places, one of them going into the Vidal chicane, the other going into turn 1, where there are solid opportunities, and possibly even coming down into this Dunlop hairpin. So there are 3 places where it might happen.
Don't you know this crowd is absolutely eating this up, watching the 2 Schumacher brothers nose to tail on their home track.
7 years separate the 2 men. Michael Schumacher, 32, his brother Ralph, 25. What a future Ralph has.
There's the old Nordschleife off in the distance, the 14-mile loop, one of the gargantuan racetracks of all time. And you can drive it or ride it on your motorcycle for a small fee. There you see it where those cars were parked. Williams team in the pit lane. But nobody heads for the entrance.
We saw some blistering on the Ralf Schumacher tires at that slow-mo at the chicane. And that could be that we'll see him stop and make an early fuel stop. That would take tremendous pressure off Michael, as he is most certainly under pressure right now.
Ralf Schumacher came through the speed trap just before the Vidal chicane at 190 miles an hour. Now, there's a couple of stories at work here. One is the coming of age of Ralf Schumacher as a potential champion. Another is the return of the Williams team as they continue this climb to the top.
When you consider that, look at this racing, Bob.
I'm thinking Michael Schumacher is in some kind of trouble here. He just is struggling to keep his brother behind him.
I'm thinking that Ralf has just turned up the wick and has got the speed.
Now the Williams team has come back out of the pit lane, so that might have been a ruse to convince the Ferrari guys to take a gamble on an early stop. If Michael's tires are shot now, he is doomed, and he will know that.
Oh, look at that. Acceleration by the Williams is just fierce. Okay, now here comes a passing opportunity. I don't think we'll see it, but this is one of the places it could happen.
And Ralf was a lot tidier off the Coca-Cola corner there than Michael was. See what happens through the Castrol.
There's no straight as long here as the one at Montreal. The tracks are very similar diagrammatically, but the difference in that one long straightaway. These straights are anemic little connectors of the turns. hardly worth the name straight away.
You're going to give this place an inferiority complex, then.
It's a track without very much character.
I'll put you on the hot seat. Sam was going to open the show by saying, welcome to one of the most heroic places in motorsports, and we're racing on a track right next to it.
This is a great battle between the two brothers. This has a lot more energy in it than the battle at Montreal, when Ralph was playing a very intellectualized waiting game. Here, I think he wants to get by.
Okay, now we're approaching the passing point at the Vidal. This is the fastest part of the racetrack. Ralph isn't close enough. Meanwhile, you see what's going on behind. David Coulthard in fourth, fully 21 seconds behind this battle. Juan Montoya about 10 seconds back in third. This is all about the Schumacher brothers.
Exactly, and a very different feeling from Montreal, where you pretty much knew they were on one-stop strategy. This has a quality of a sort of anxiety to it, I would say, a kind of frenetic quality almost. And of course, remember that it's fought out in front of their home audience, so every move is freighted with significance here that perhaps was missing in Montreal.
There's Montoya. That Castrol section in the background is going to be dug up at year end as part of a multi-million-dollar renovation of this racetrack, adding another 30,000 seats. A lot of that attributable, of course, to the fact that the Schumacher brothers are German heroes.
And the Mercedes engine is aboard the McLaren, and the BMW engine aboard the Williams. The German contribution to Formula One right now is very heavy indeed, and all of it very high quality.
Now this, I believe, is Mika Hakkinen. Several laps ago, we mentioned that he had an off and on. Didn't slow him up, gained no positions.
And
This is Giancarlo Fisichella trying the same route.
Little Baja moment there.
Of course, what that does is dump about half a truckload of dust onto the chicane. Fisichella right into the pits.
So it might have done him a little bit of damage. He did bounce through it.
Both Fisichella and the Benetton Renault team are very much in the frame as the silly season approaches top speed. He is managed by his team director, Flavio Briatore, as is Fernando Alonso, as is Jarno Trulli, as is Formula 3000 star Mark Webber. The question is, where will all those drivers be, and what engines will be behind them? Because Briatore also pulls the strings on the Asia Tech program.
You mentioned Formula 3000. Derek Hill had a good drive yesterday into 15th place. His best finish, I believe, so far. I think if he gets another season in Formula 3000, we're going to really see some results from Derek. The problem is they just don't have enough time to practice and qualify, and when you haven't run the tracks and are unfamiliar with the scene, there just isn't enough time to show your ability.
We spoke with Derek at Le Mans. You look at Ross Braun and John Todt looking on. Derek is in a great frame of mind. He knows he's in a good team, that the tracks are unfamiliar. He's with a fast guy who's been through the series before in Bourdais. And he's in very good spirits. I think he, like you, he's going to do well if he's just given some time. Ooh, Ralph all over Michael now.
Track temperature about 88, which certainly is very, very good for the Michelins, which thrive on the warmer track. You see, Ralph he's taking a look. He's making sure that Michael is distracted by his presence back there.
On board with Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Still with Irvine behind him and the two Saubers ahead of him.
Irvine qualified. Irvine qualified 10th, but might very well have been 8th. He got balked just as he was turning very, very good lap. I think we're seeing that degree of performance now that the race is underway.
Meanwhile, up front, Michael Schumacher put a wheel off again. He is definitely having problems with that Ferrari at just the point in the race when you think the car would be getting faster. He is 4/10 a lap slower than he was previously. Could be a tire problem on the Ferrari. There is Michael, followed by Ralph, who showed 2 weeks ago that he is perfectly content to sit behind and study the car ahead of him. Jenson Button and Enrique Bernoldi have begun the round of pit stops. We'll take a quick break so that we can catch the heavy hitters when they come in. Stand by for more from Germany. Welcome back live, watching the lead battle in round 9 of the Formula One World Championship as we approach the season's halfway point here at the Nürburgring. Olivier Panis just planted the BAR in a gravel trap. He is out, and the pit stops have begun. As I'm sure you know, our Speed Vision coverage of Formula One doesn't begin or end here in our live broadcast. Log on to speedvision.com for post-race spin, the roundtable, Alan Henry, Steve Matchett, and a whole lot more. Speedvision.com, your source for Formula One news and information.
0.4 of a second between the two Schumachers. Now, of course, in other years, this race has been held either in the spring or the fall, and we're used to having it be cold or even rainy, so to have a track temperature in the high 80s is something new for the guys in terms of the setup of the cars.
Here comes Juan Montoya. It seems like almost every lap around, Ralf Schumacher resets fast lap, followed immediately by Montoya, who does the same, and he continues to draw up on this battle for the lead, now barely 7 seconds behind.
Michael Schumacher is starting to slow up the group here, and it's allowing Montoya back into the picture, which Ralf cannot like.
As you see, Montoya very much quicker than race leader Michael Schumacher over the last 3 or 4 laps. Ralf Schumacher just went through the traps last time around at 192 miles an hour plus.
Now Ralf says to himself, I've got my brother out front of me. I can't make a bonehead passing attempt because I can't take us both out. But I've got Montoya, who scares me to death, coming up behind me, and I got to do something. Pit stops are maybe a little too far away for it to sort out, so what am I going to do? I got to keep showing Michael, I'm back here, let me by, give me a shot at him.
Around to complete lap 26 unofficially. And now we're not even worried about Ralf. This is the gap everybody's watching as Juan Pablo Montoya takes another 3/10 off the race leader.
He's coming. The Indy winner from last year, the prodigy of the Argentine GP, is catching the leaders.
Look at that, 18.3 for Montoya. Last year's fast lap, well, actually the record fast lap in the race,
Michael's
was
bailing.
120.
He's bailing. He's getting out of there.
We are lapping 2 seconds faster than the previous record fast lap for the race. Now this could be interesting. We get both the Williams and the Ferrari in the pits at the same time.
We said who blinks first. They may blink at the same time.
A bit of like a tire marble.
It's too fraught, I'll tell you. And they're coming up on traffic, which is probably the decisive factor. They don't want, the pit guys don't want to let them come up on traffic.
And while the gap from first to third is closing up, it's getting longer from first to fourth as the McLaren teammates, led by David Coulthard, slide back into irrelevance at this point.
Very well put. There it is.
They both come in.
Michael throws him a dummy and then veers across.
Now it's up to the pit crews. The Ferrari will reach its space first. On the pit lane speed limit. Juan Montoya moves into the race lead as Ralf comes to a stop. And there are heavily scuffed tires going on Schumacher, Ralf's car. Michael moves first. Ooh, is that a long stop for Ralf? 9.7 seconds. He comes out, well, a non-entity of a distance behind his brother. I guess the question is where they'll come out on the racetrack. Can Michael stick this car between? Yes, he can.
Yes, he can. So that becomes a critical moment. I think Michael just bought himself some breathing room.
Now, that was Mika Hakkinen in 5th, who now finds himself between the Schumachers.
That could be a huge breather for Michael.
Let's double check that McLaren drive. And it's not 5th either, because obviously the Schumachers, during their pit stop,
it's probably 3rd.
Put them up, probably 3rd place, yeah. Listen to the crowd. Michael now shown in 2nd place behind Montoya.
Montoya leading for the 2nd time. 3rd time this year is coming into the pits. He's led in Argentina, Austria, and now here in Germany.
27 miles an hour into the pits. We'll be looking for Michael as well as Ralf. Montoya comes back out. David Coulthard also in that mix. He has not pitted yet, however.
Looks like another set of super scuffed tires.
Decent stop, not spectacular, but it is still early in the race. And here they come. Michael regains the race lead. Ralph slots back.
And Montoya is closer than before, behind Ralph, but about the same distance behind Michael.
That is
so
David
the
Coulthard.
Loser there was Ralph.
I think so, and now he finds himself behind DC.
Which is a very bad situation, particularly if DC doesn't contemplate a stop in the next couple of laps. That's going to hold Ralph up because Coulthard was losing, at least 6 to 8 tenths of a second a lap to the leaders.
In comes a Jordan. This is Heinz Harold Frentzen from 11th place.
Bad. He was running 10th. He lost a spot. Not his day.
McLarens remain on the track, so the McLarens may be going for a one-stop.
Which explains their sluggishness, I think. And that will be devastating to Ralf Schumacher's hopes. He's going to have to attack DC aggressively. And he's not in an ideal situation now because he himself is heavy with fuel.
It's Enrique Bernoldi getting out of the way of the race leader. Now, Ralf Schumacher was stationary a good bit longer than Michael, which suggests that more fuel went into the car. He's got scuffed Michelins on, so they've been through a heat cycle. They could conceivably last the rest of the way, as long as we're playing devil's advocate. I guess the problem right now for Ralph is the man directly ahead of him on the racetrack, David Coulthard. Look at Ralph all over the back of him. Down. Oh, we'll run by him down into the Dunlop. Great move by Ralf Schumacher.
Bob, what's the possibility that maybe Michael, in contrast to Ralph, took on a short fuel load? He had a shorter pit stop, and
there's the other side of the
moving
coin,
out
right.
very, very fast, and he got a break in having Ralph held up there by DC. There's Panis running back. And things have worked out incredibly well here for Michael in this phase of the race.
That would be another master stroke by Ross Braun and the Pit Brain Trust. That's Enrique Bernoldi's car. Smoking at all four corners.
Michael is going to need all the help he can get in this race because he's not the fastest car. We've seen him win races before when he wasn't the fastest. This could be a classic.
Ralph is coming on again, going around Jos Verstappen. Now Montoya has to deal with David Coulthard. I'm surprised the McLaren is still so far off the pace.
Because the load should be lightening up. They should be running fast.
A lot lighter than the Williams at this point, at any rate.
Coulthard has to think of his championship situation. He is still in the hunt very much, although he's been slipping back. He's one of the possible championship contenders.
Enrique Bernoldi still shown in 19th, but he will be added to the list of cars out of the race. Pretty short list at this point. There's Montoya.
Coulthard currently 18 points behind Michael Schumacher. If this race plays out, he'll be 24 probably.
Closes up. Some of the Bridgestone tire contracts are up at the end of the year. Given the way the tire war has gone thus far, some of those teams may be changing. We'll take a quick break and return in just a moment.
His brother began to catch him. All sorts of strategies in terms of fuel load and pit stops are now playing out.
That lap comparison right there, Sam, showed that Ralph suddenly is not on pace with his brother. Michael is now a tenth or two up. I want to take you back to that moment just a lap or so ago when Montoya, second in line, closed up a bit too quickly on the McLaren, had to lock up the brakes and go straight on. He managed to keep it out of the gravel, however. Here's Ralf Schumacher in second.
In this middle phase of the race here, Ralf Schumacher has not been able to demonstrate the killer speed that he had just before the pit stops. He was all over Michael just before the pit stops. Now he is roughly the same speed.
I wonder if that would mean that he did take on more fuel and the Williams is slightly heavier. Or as you say, the Ferrari is lighter. Approaching halfway, the McLaren's obviously on a one-stop strategy. Mika Hakkinen has already been in. David Coulthard has not. On board with Montoya. Replay of what we just saw. Modulating the brake pedal to get that wheel turning again and keep the steering.
The key situation here is that if Ralph can keep station, that's basically going to be decisive in his favor. He needs to gain a little bit on Michael, but not a lot, because if the advantage that has accrued to Michael is because he took on less fuel, he's going to have to take on more the next time around, and Ralph will take on less. But track position is so critical, and that favors Michael. I mean, he is out front, and he's going to have to lose some of that lead for Ralph to get by during the next exchange of pit stops, no matter what they do in terms of fuel load.
So Ralph has to stay close.
He's got to stay, in my view, within 3 to 4 seconds. Well, 3. I would feel uncomfortable outside of 3 seconds.
Yep. Now this was the pit entry as Michael tossed the feint there at his brother and then dove across the gore into the pit lane. Michael goes by Nick Heidfeld.
Heidfeld having his first race, oddly enough, here in Formula One, that is, in front of his home crowd. See, that gap is a little too big if I'm Ralph. I'm saying I got to make up some of that.
Interesting to see when Ralph catches up to Nick Heidfeld, assuming he does, how easy it will be to pass the Sauber with the Petronas badged Ferrari engine. Good look from high above, what we used to call the new Nürburgring when it was opened back in the 80s. Typical of the modern racetracks, it can be divided, as you see, into small segments for car clubs and minor formula races. There's Ralph. I mentioned before the break that several of the Bridgestone tire contracts are up. Not that anyone will be stepping away from Bridgestone, which are on the Ferrari, McLaren, Jordan, BAR, Sauber, and Arrows teams.
Bob, I think, excuse me, just butting in a second, because I think this is very important, what we're watching here, that the gap is staying the same. Don't be misled to think this is dull for a second. I think that this is a decisive moment in the race, and if Ralph cannot erode this gap a little bit, Michael is going to, the strategy of the lighter fuel load there taken on at that first stop is going to play out in Michael's favor. He's going to win this thing with a slower car, which is a very exciting possibility. Ralph has got to do something, and apparently whatever settings or tire situation he's got is not as ideal as he had in the first go-round.
Just had a brief little bobble too, so Ralph is definitely trying hard. Behind him, Juan Pablo Montoya remains stuck behind David Coulthard, who has yet to pit. Rubens Barrichello has yet to pit the Ferrari. Eddie Irvine and Jacques Villeneuve have not been in yet either.
That explains Barrichello's lackluster start. The extra fuel, here's Eddie.
Irvine pits. The scuffle between McLaren and Jaguar over the future services of ace Formula One designer Adrian Newey has been resolved, as Peter Windsor mentioned earlier. A large check probably changed hands. No launch control on that exit. 12.7
Not a very good
seconds.
stop either.
No.
Eddie Irvine doing a very good job for Jaguar. One of the most outspoken of the drivers, probably the most outspoken.
David Coulthard in the McLaren. Agonizingly slow. So Coulthard will make his one and only stop. Again, Rubens Barrichello has not pitted the other Ferrari. Now the officials say that Ralf Schumacher will be penalized for an infraction, and that will basically gut the race for the overall victory.
What on earth could he have done? What a...
Exiting and running over the white line. I'm guessing it's that one that separates the pit exit from the racing surface. We'll have to wait and see. Heidfeld allows him by.
If it's a 10-second, that'll drop him back around 4th, even 5th. What a blow. That puts Montoya, of course, in the attack position in 2nd, and it's not impossible. Here it is going to be a 10-second.
And immediately he ducks to the pit lane. Oh, please. The white line on the pit exit?
You just hate this. Rules are rules, but you just hate this. Unless, of course, you're a fan of Michael Schumacher, in which case a dramatic development to his advantage, which he had no control over at all. This is where luck is a player in Formula One, as it is in all races.
See where Ralf Schumacher exits.
Presumably very tightly inside the line.
Nobody around him.
4th, yeah. I feared it might be as far back as 5th, but...
Well, Coulthard has yet to pit, so if he can get some time on the track here, he may yet have a shot at the podium.
Well, you're going to see some very hot driving by Ralf.
Now here's a replay. There is Michael.
Oh,
well, about a car length more than his brother did.
And yeah.
Oh.
That is ridiculous.
That is a brutally inappropriate call.
And there were no cars.
There
were no cars anywhere nearby that were threatened by the situation.
It's not like a pit lane speed violation or something like that, passing under the yellow.
And, you know, you think of yourself in the car. At that point, the road is cresting slightly downhill. It's very hard to see that line. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Oh. Jordan's locking him up ahead.
Jordan's not having a terribly good day, truly in 7th.
This is Frentzen in 12th, but at that they're doing a bit better than the BAR team.
Truly really needs a finish. He started the season strong with a 7th, a 5th, a 7th, a 5th, a 6th, a 5th, and then he started breaking down.
There's Patrick Head walking over from the pit lane. His temperature is something 100 degrees or so above the ambient, you can be sure. Frankly, I agree with him. We'll be back with more live from Germany in just a moment.
Welcome back to the European Grand Prix held this year at the Nürburgring, and we have had plenty of action while you've been away. On Barrichello, still running 3rd, has not made a pit stop, and of course there's all the confusion over the penalty assessed to Ralf Schumacher, which has effectively knocked him out of the pursuing position. But Montoya, Bob Varsha, is now making up ground and is, as you can see, moving very, very quickly toward Michael Schumacher.
As Ralf Schumacher did before him, Montoya seems to have the speed edge right now. He is less than 9 seconds from the race leader. There is David Coulthard, currently shown in 5th spot. But the gap from Montoya in 2nd to Barrichello in 3rd is 32 seconds. And as you mentioned, Barrichello has yet to make his pit stop, so he is basically doomed at this point. Then Ralf Schumacher, 4 seconds behind Barrichello. Here's Jean Alesi making his one and only stop. Pedro de la Rosa has yet to pit the Jaguar, and Jacques Villeneuve has not yet pitted in his BAR. Those are the only cars, in addition to Barrichello, who have yet to stop.
Bob, I think we should take another look, don't you, at that infraction. Let's see here as we see Michael Schumacher coming out first with Ralf Schumacher behind. Now, Michael puts 2 wheels over that line. Ralf only puts 2 wheels over that line. Now, in other words, I thought maybe he put 4 over and that was the point of distinction. I don't get it. It seems like a real nitpick to me. I can't understand why one of those drivers would be penalized and not the other.
Well, in the fullness of time, maybe some other excuse for that 10-second stop-and-go penalty will be revealed. Nevertheless, Jacques Villeneuve pits from the 6th and final points-paying position. We are now officially into the second half of the 2001 Formula One season. I'm Bob Varsha, along with Sam Posey, Steve Matchett, and David Hobbs will be with us next week for the French Grand Prix. Keep in mind, we get off our bi-weekly schedule. We have France next week from Manicourt, live here on Speed Vision. Good stop for Villeneuve, but not perhaps enough to salvage any points in this race.
Ferrari looking for the arrival of Barrichello, currently running third behind Montoya in second. Here he comes.
Raikkonen was just over the brow, so goes Barrichello in.
Out of third place.
The back of the picture there is where the toll gate is, where you pay a few Deutschmarks and enter the 14-mile strip of asphalt known as the Nordschleife, the North Loop. Back on June 6th, Hans Stuck went around in a BMW Sport Ute, the X5, with the V12 engine that powered their Le Mans 24-hour winner in less than 8 minutes. There's one of the Benettons.
By contrast, Fangio in 1957 went around a 9:17.4 for a lap record that at the time was thought would never be beaten. Isn't that something?
Barrichello comes out in fifth, and he too nicked that white line just a little bit. Here's De La Rosa in the Jaguar. No substantial changes to this car recently.
They have been looking to improve their aerodynamic package, so far without success. They are working hard on a wind tunnel, which they don't possess.
They're also planning to build a massive new facility at a former airfield at Gaydon in England. Bring together all of Ford's various European motorsports activities, Formula One, rally, of course, a very prominent program. Colin McRae has won 3 World Championship rallies on the trot. You've seen them all here on Speed Vision. No problems for Jarno Trulli. Oh, is that possible? Back at the Nürburgring, Bob Varsha, Sam Posey with you. Norbert Haag looks on, wondering what might have been, because his man, 2-time world champion Mika Häkkinen, is about to be lapped by race leader Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. A year ago, these two men were fighting for the race victory. What a difference a year makes. If you're just joining us, Michael Schumacher's spare car stalled on his reconnaissance lap. He had to commandeer a scooter, make his way back to the pit lane, hopped in his race car, much to the cajoling of his Ferrari teammates. Got away in the race lead, but hounded throughout by his brother, Ralf Schumacher. The two pitted together from first and second. Michael got out first, and shortly after, his brother was slapped with a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for crossing the white line at the pit exit, just slightly more egregiously than his brother did just ahead of him. So right now, the running order is Schumacher, Michael out front. Juan Pablo Montoya runs in second place. And there you see the rest on the World Feed graphics.
Montoya's gap back to, from Schumacher is it's holding about even right now. So he is unable to mount an attack, and Michael Schumacher definitely has the breathing room that he needs for any kind of a pit stop in terms of fuel load. And it's incredible the way Michael swept by Mika Häkkinen. Häkkinen not able to give any kind of a fight, hold him up in any way at all.
Checking the gap, first to second. Nope, it's opened a bit.
I've never seen a Mika Häkkinen than that. Just hold him aside and let him by.
Well, it is one of the interesting stories at this point in the season. McLaren is off the pace. You mentioned earlier the death of Ilmor Engineering co-founder Paul Morgan. Perhaps Peter Windsor can check into that for the French Grand Prix to find out what on earth is going on at McLaren. Norbert Haag in a Thursday press conference said, "We simply haven't been good enough."
Well, they have their Adrian Newey situation going on too that's commanded a lot of attention. They've got him back, but they've lost ground overall because of the distractions and the loss of morale, obviously. When your key designer that you're paying an awful lot of money is going behind your back, essentially, and trying to cut a deal with a rival team, that undermines morale, no question.
It's not a happy time in McLaren Mercedes country. Just before we went to the break, we got a glimpse of Jarno Trulli pulling off track. The Ferrari team heads to the pit lane. This will have to be a quick one for Michael, and the Williams team is in the pit lane as well. Trulli now out of the race, so the Italian's desperate luck continues. And speaking of which, there is his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who has spun himself out of his home Grand Prix.
The Jordan year of despair continues, and of course it's the second year in a row. And here's Michael.
See if one of the Williams cars follows him in, or takes over the race lead, decides to cut a few fast laps. No, Montoya's in from second.
It's just that he was that far back on the track. Michael out just as Montoya sweeps by. So the distance between them is the time it takes for Montoya's stop.
And the horns begin in the grandstands as their hero, Michael Schumacher, emerges back into the race lead.
Staying well inside the white line.
Longer stop for Montoya.
This race appears, as of right now, to be another Ferrari strategic masterpiece, aided, of course, by the devastating penalty to the one person that might have gotten to him, which was Ralf Schumacher. Here's Frenssen's spin.
Oh, lock at the front right. This isn't the Dunlop corner. Oh, he got on the power too quickly?
I don't know. I guess.
Just snapped around on it.
It seemed unusual, to say the least, that he couldn't control that slide. I favor something wrong in the car there.
He's gotten back in the car, or perhaps never got out of it. There's Eddie Jordan on the left.
Eddie Jordan gnashing his teeth, the season going awry for him. But the good news, of course, is that Honda will stay with him through the rest of this year and next. That's the key. He's got a future.
17 laps to go. Comes Fernando Alonso, followed by the race leader, Michael Schumacher. We're hearing Fernando Alonso, under management from Flavio Briatore, might wind up with the Benetton team, which is also run by Briatore.
Michael Schumacher, of course, has won the first two races of the year. Then he won it again, and it now looks as if he's headed for yet another victory to increase his already substantial lead in the World Championship here at the halfway point of the season.
Running order is Michael Schumacher, Juan Montoya, Ralf Schumacher, then David Coulthard, Rubens Barrichello, and Mika Hakkinen as the laps begin to trickle down. We'll take another break. Return for more from Germany. Welcome back. This is Ralf Schumacher making his final pit stop with approximately 15 laps to go. This took place just a moment ago while we were in our commercial break. We have one more break to go for the checkered flag. So settle in and enjoy it live with us here on Speed Vision. Here's a look at Nick Heidfeld, courtesy of RTL German television. There is Ralf Schumacher.
Heidfeld back in 11th. Ralf Schumacher in 4th, following his pit stop and his penalty.
Well, that penalty really emerges as the key issue in the race thus far, the turning point, if you will. Ralf Schumacher was in position to possibly challenge his brother for the race victory. And it all at this point is what might have been, Sam.
Well, let's take a look at the Bridgestone race reset. What you'll see is the leader, Michael Schumacher, one lead change. That was when he made his pit stop, and Montoya led very briefly. It has been Michael's race the entire way, but the story was Ralf's penalty, no question about it, because Ralf Schumacher was taking the fight right to his brother Michael when he was penalized for crossing the white line, leaving the pits. And Bob, I think that's going to be a much discussed penalty, because it not only has affected the outcome of this race, but looking down, we're at the halfway point in the season, it might very well be that Ralf Schumacher will be challenging for the World Championship at the end, and the points he loses today could be decisive. Who knows? That's
true, Sam. I just want to go back to that picture under our Bridgestone race reset. You saw a fellow in McLaren garb with chin in hand. Oh, Heidfeld slow. He might have been off and on, looking for a gear. And now he appears to be accelerating once again. Bit of a moment for Nick Heidfeld, but getting back to the fellow in the McLaren garage, that was Joe Ramirez, who's been doing this since God invented dirt. And this weekend, he was nice enough to give us his memory of the Nürburgring. And Dan Gurney's great race in the Eagle chassis. That was in 1967. When Gurney won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and then barely a week later won the Formula One race at Spa in Belgium in that same Eagle Westlake.
Arguably the best looking car, I think, ever built for Formula One. And with Dan driving it, that commanding style that he had, the relaxed and yet decisive way he drove, it was fantastic to see it.
Joe Ramirez was one of Dan's mechanics then. I'm sure Dan and wife Evie are looking on from California. Their son Alex races in the British Formula 3 Championship at Castle Combe this weekend. And Joe Ramirez is still in Formula One. Well, Nick Heidfeld having a terrible problem with the Sauber.
Heidfeld has not had a happy midpoint of the season. 2 DNFs in a row, a 9th before that. He did score a point in Spain, but this is not a mid-season to remember for Nick Heidfeld, having otherwise he started very well for Sauber this year.
Heidfeld comes in. Words from the garage area say that Jarno Trulli's problem was a clutch. As Heidfeld crab walks his car to the Sauber garage, pick up the race leader, Michael Schumacher, checking the interval.
And the interval has gone way, way up. 5 seconds in about 3 laps, I make it. So at this point, Michael Schumacher not under any pressure whatsoever from Montoya. Montoya already has a 2nd place to his credit this year, headed apparently for another 2nd place. Both Williams cars still running and running well.
And that would continue the Williams pattern this year, DNFing most of the races, but the ones they finish, they do well. Montoya's 2nd place in Spain, his only other finish thus far this year. We'll be back with more from the Nürburgring.
Welcome back to the Nürburgring. 9 laps to go. Michael Schumacher still out front, almost 14 seconds ahead of Montoya. Schumacher headed for his 2nd consecutive victory here and his 5th victory of the season if this holds up for another 8.5 laps. Everyone at the Cafe Paradiso must be chug-a-lugging Oscar's fine coffee up there and trying to stay awake at this point so they can celebrate Michael's success. Just
for free minutes, there or something?
Minutes away now, I guess. A very definite Ferrari day. Even Barrichello is doing okay back in 5th, although it has not been his day at all.
Well, as far as the championship is concerned, Michael Schumacher runs in the lead in line for 10 championship points. David Coulthard is 3rd, which would net him 4. So that 18-point gap that Michael Schumacher came in with would swell further. Ironically, a year ago at this race, when Michael Schumacher beat Mika Hakkinen, the margin he left with was 18 points over the Finn.
That was later in the season.
That's true. In fact, this is the first time this race has been held this close to the midsummer solstice.
It's very strange to have it now. It's usually in the spring or fall. The weather's much worse. And I think it shows that the crowd is enjoying it tremendously. A huge turnout here, obviously, to watch the brothers fight it out. And you can imagine the reaction. The officials are going to be tarred and feathered, I think, for that decision.
Chief stewards are selected from the body of some 140 countries that are a part of the FIA, the International Motorsports Governing Body. On board with Montoya. Barrichello, who has been off and on in the Ferrari.
And back on, looks like it. Now, as we watch Montoya driving from the onboard, there is a man who is stroking it home in second place. He is not on the attack at all. He's keeping the pace in case something goes wrong, but he's definitely not pushing hard.
Here's another look at Barrichello. Boy, he was well and truly off.
Whoa, he was so lucky not to spin it. Unbelievable. That nearly came around on Rubens. His day obviously has been a miserable one. Something in the setup of the car cannot have been right. He was slow off the mark and has stayed slow throughout. Has had no fight in him at all today.
He should be still in 5th place with the chance for 2 championship points for himself as well as the team. He had a big gap over the 6th place car of Mika Hakkinen.
Let's hope his car is okay after that excursion. I would reckon it would be, but you saw him give it just a little wiggle there to be sure. Obviously, he was running all by himself. That was possibly a loss of concentration.
Getting back to what you were saying about Juan Montoya, basically fighting a holding action at this point. He remains about 14 seconds and change behind race leader Michael Schumacher, but David Coulthard is closing up from behind. Oh, there's Jos Verstappen. Both arrows now out of the race.
Verstappen, who has made more passes this year than any other driver, by virtue of starting so deep in the field all the time and with a small fuel tank. He's run very light, come up, but he's done a beautiful job.
Hasn't worked well for the Arrows team. He was 14th when he departed the race. You see the laps remaining for Michael Schumacher.
I believe Michael Schumacher was under pressure in a way today that he has not been all year long, really. Ralf Schumacher, about 20, 25 laps into this race, was really taking the battle to him. Here's Montoya. Watch how easy he is with the wheel. Cruise mode. For anybody else, that would be right on the racket edge.
These guys play to a different set of rules.
Yeah, they sure do. But I mean, he obviously sees the chance for another solid 2nd place spot on the podium, of course, and anything can happen. Ralf, just a bit behind him there in 4th, with Coulthard buffering the 2 of them. Michael could drop out, of course, but I think Montoya is just counting on his 6 points.
5 laps to go.
Trying to put what we've seen in perspective, I think today, obviously Ferrari has been able to respond to the increased speed of the Williams car, which is now a fact of life. They're going to have to contend with that. And every race they buy and get in the bank without a Williams beating them is a step toward the championship. And of course today it looked as if Ralf might have taken points away from Michael. Instead, the penalty and so forth has eliminated that possibility.
You see Ralf chugging around. He is still trying hard. He is getting closer to David Coulthard in 3rd. This is Montoya. Boy, that could have been a close moment. That was Luciano Berti in the cross. Seven cars remain on the lead lap as the Colombian comes over the brow. It's the Jaguar. Villeneuve behind in the BAR. That's De La Rosa and Villeneuve, 8th and 9th. Looks like Jenson Button several laps down in 14th. There's David Coulthard in 3rd, and no sign of Ralf Schumacher, who's kind of stuck behind that battle. Raikkonen and Alesi battling over 10. There's Ralf. it appears will run out of laps before he can make up that 5.7-second deficit to Coulthard.
And of course, if he makes it up, getting by is going to be very tough. And there's no reason for Ralph, who's won 2 races outright this year, to make a bonehead move trying to pick up 1 spot back there. It's not going to be a point that's going to count.
This is about the championship. So Michael Schumacher in position to pick up 10 more points, which would give him 68. David Coulthard would pick up 4 points, giving him just 44. A couple for Rubens Barrichello would give him 26. Ralph Schumacher would get 3, giving him 25.
Boy, that gives Michael a 2.5 race advantage, so to speak. He can go that far without scoring any points if DC scores full points. That's a huge advantage at this point in the season, because we're past, as you pointed out, halfway through this race. The sort of continental divide has been crossed, and we're on the downhill side of the season.
Of course, our next race just next week will be at Manicourt, where Michael Schumacher and David Coulthard had that colossal wheel-to-wheel last year in the Adelaide hairpin, where Coulthard tried him a couple of times, let him know on no uncertain terms that he thought it was being chopped, and finally bumped Schumacher to make his way by. Michael also suffered one of his few engine-related failures last year. David Coulthard went on to win the race, so anything can happen. We still have a long way to go in this Formula One season.
That no uncertain terms, Bob, did that include the raising of a single digit in the air by DC there?
That's right. He told Michael that he was number 1.
About that. Michael Schumacher in absolute control of this race, as he was in control of qualifying yesterday with a blistering lap. Just when he needed it, replying to his brother's speed, he uncorked something that I think was his best lap of the season.
2 laps remaining. Here's Montoya. Michael Schumacher slowing just that little bit. Montoya now less than 10 seconds behind. Everyone consolidating what they have.
So on home ground, at least, Big Brother has prevailed over Little Brother for 1 more year, but watch out. Little Brother is coming and coming hard.
7 cars remain on the lead lap. Eddie Irvine, perhaps not likely to be caught by Michael Schumacher before the finish. This victory would be Michael Schumacher's 49th, bringing him within 2 of Alain Prost's all-time record of 51. And finally, Ralph Schumacher gets by that battle for 10th place.
A race which, with the exception of what happened to this man, Ralph Schumacher has run very much according.
Oh, a lazy off.
Lacey, who's finished the last 2 races
in the points.
Takes it off the road with just a couple of laps to go.
He was in 11th, so no chances of points in this race, but still, the Frenchman has the fire. There's talk of him moving to champ cars, but he is also taking proposals for next year in Formula One. Final lap now, in this massive German crowd is never shy about expressing their support. Oh, it was a dive down the inside of the Dunlop that got a lazy.
Boy, it was an ambitious move, a great move, really.
And he never lifted. Oh, as a lazy walks forlornly back, no tossing of the helmet into the crowd this weekend. Now the crowd begins to go crazy. On the cool-down lap, you will see fireworks and probably a whole lot more. Corner to go for Michael Schumacher. Another terrific race, maximizing what he had, combining strategy and driver and car performance for his 49th career victory, moving ever closer to becoming the all-time most successful Grand Prix driver. There is Juan Pablo Montoya picking up a well-deserved 2nd place.
Remember, Michael was lucky too.
David Coulthard unofficially will come around in 3rd place, followed by Ralph Schumacher, who must be bitterly disappointed. It's a shame he won't be on the podium, because it would be great to hear what he had to say about that controversial crossing the white line at the pit exit violation that led to a 10-second stop-and-go penalty. And his chances of winning this race simply evaporated. Barrichello across in 5th, to be followed by Mika Hakkinen picking up the 6th and final championship point. Here comes the McLaren. And just behind him, Eddie Irvine, stalwart to the end in the Jaguar, but he will finish on the lead lap. Here's a look at the final results. Michael Schumacher over Juan Pablo Montoya and David Coulthard. Pedro de la Rosa brings the other Jaguar home 8th, followed by Jacques Villeneuve 9th and Kimi Räikkönen 10th. A lot of attrition in the late going.
Bridgestone, Michelin, Bridgestone, Michelin, Bridgestone, Bridgestone, Michelin, Michelin. Pretty even down the line there as far as the tires.
Next week, of course, is Manicourt, where the teams do an awful lot of testing. So the tire companies, as well as the team engineers, will go in with lots of data. It'll be interesting to see who emerges on top. See the drivers out of the race. Tarso Marquez officially the first man out.
Panis having his 100th Formula One race today. Unfortunately, not one to celebrate.
Make it pretty forgettable, I would guess. A lot of red in the crowd. There is Montoya. A salute to the fans. Here comes David Coulthard. He too has to be pretty disappointed at his lack of competitiveness at a time of the season when he desperately needs to finish ahead of Michael Schumacher. Today he simply could not do it.
He's got to be pleased with a strong finish on a day where he had no basic hope.
Team expected to take up its option on David Coulthard's services for next year, but they like to make their announcements of their driver pairings at one time. So as soon as Mika Hakkinen's deal is worked out with his manager, former racing driver K.K. Rosberg, we'll hear that McLaren will likely keep its drivers together for the 7th consecutive season, Formula One record. And the horns sound once again as Michael Schumacher climbs from his Ferrari.
Masterpiece, qualifying, a masterpiece of racing. Huge weekend for Michael Schumacher at home here at the Nürburgring.
Last year he said it was his greatest day ever to win in the Ferrari on home soil. This Flash, old Benetton, Brabham team principal.
This will be Michael's 90th podium in 153 Grand Prix. Think of that, 90 podiums in 153 Grand Prix. What an average.
See the podium just above Parc Fermé here at the Nürburgring, so the drivers will be there shortly. We want to bring that to you live, so we'll take another quick break and be back to the Nürburgring in just a moment. Stay with us.
How much PC can $849 get you? More PC than we can tell you about in 30 seconds. A super fast Intel Pentium 3 processor, CD-ROM, accelerated graphics, pro quality audio system, monitor, one-touch internet access, lots of memory, plus 5 color choices, red, green, blue, purple, and orange. And that's just for starters. The compact Presario 5000T. Let us build one for you. Call toll-free 1-888-289-0037 for all this, and we'll double your memory for free. Hey, do I have time to mention the...
I've always loved working on computers, and in the Army, that's what I do.
If you never thought about the U.S. Army or Army Reserve, think about this. There are 212 ways for you to become a soldier and work at a job you'll love. Call 1-800-959-ARMY for this free video to find out which job is right for you and discover the 212 ways you can be an army of one.
I love what I do.
'57 vet, huh? Of course, you got a lens cap from a '56, but you did know that, didn't you? And you got a little bit of a gap over here, and you got a ding in your chrome. God, it hurts me to see that. So now I gotta ask myself, what's under the towel? Duct tape? Duct tape!
Speed Vision Network. Motorheads live here.
Back live to the Nürburgring, where the celebrations are well and truly underway. The podium ceremony awaits. The team has gathered, the Ferrari team that is, below the podium. There they are.
Well within range of the champagne, which will soon be spraying down upon them.
And here they come. Michael Schumacher, well within reach of Alain Prost, the all-time lead in Formula One victories.
And a fourth world champion.
And a fourth world championship, which would tie him with Alain Prost, just one behind the maestro Fangio. Time for the anthems. Of Germany for Michael Schumacher and Italy for Ferrari. To the left, dressed in Ferrari red, is Nigel Stepney, the Englishman who gave our Steve Matchett his first job as a Formula One mechanic and who has had the honor of being run over by Michael Schumacher in the pit lane. Lest we forget, this is a team effort.
A team that has now stayed together for 5 years, built carefully by Jean Todt. In case you're wondering, Warsteiner, the sponsor of this race, is a German brewery, one of, I'm told, 1,700 German breweries making over 4,000 brands of beer. But no champagne. Nope. Word of
these gentlemen want to get anywhere near that champagne, as I'm sure we'll see in just a moment. What are David Coulthard's chances of catching Michael Schumacher this year? On the face of the numbers, well, 5 victories from 9 races, 3 second places for Michael Schumacher, and 1, count 'em, 1 DNF.
I don't see a crack in the Schumacher armor at this point of view, and time is suddenly becoming very much on his side.
Will it change the strategies from here to the end of the season? That remains to be seen. Of course, along the way, the circus will pitch its tent at Indianapolis for the U.S. Grand Prix. I hope you have your tickets. We'll be right back.